lift, then opens the checkbook. Marriott did not do that. Marriott moved early. And when a company that size moves early on a 20-year-old ranked 20th in the world, the interesting question isn't how much did she get paid. The interesting question is, what did Marriott see that the rest of the market hadn't priced in yet? That's what this video is about, not the deal, the timing of the deal. Because a lot of coverage right now is treating this like any other sponsorship story. Famous player, famous brand, big check, congratulations. And I understand why. That framing is easy, it fits the algorithm, but it misses what actually happened here, and it misses it in a way that matters if you want to understand where Alex Eala's career is going over the next 3 years, not the next 3 weeks. The reason the signing date matters more than the signing amount is that timing is the one thing a sports marketing deal cannot fake. Everything else, the number, the length, the perks, can be negotiated, papered over, spun in a press release. Timing is a decision. Timing is a bet. And Marriott's bet was placed at a very specific moment for very specific reasons. And if you understand those reasons, you understand something about Eala's real market value that no one is talking about yet. Before we get there, if you're new to this channel, I go deep on WTA storylines, especially the ones the mainstream tennis press glosses over. Consider subscribing. It helps this kind of long-form reporting keep existing. Quick grounding for anyone who's arriving to the Eala story late. Alex Eala is a 20-year-old professional tennis player from the Philippines. She turned pro in 2020, spent her development years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, and until this summer was a top 50 player with a small, devoted following and a growing reputation. In the space of about 6 weeks in mid-2026, 3 things happened that changed her category. At Wimbledon, she beat the defending champion Iga Świątek in the 3rd round. A straight sets result, 7-6, 6-2 on center court. That's a match the world watched and did not forget. Then at the DC Open at the beginning of August, she strung together the most disruptive week of her career, beating Jessica Pegula, Elina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka en route to her first ever WTA singles title, the first ever won by a Filipino player on the tour. On August 4th, the day after the trophy lift, the WTA rankings updated, and she stood at world number 20, a career high and the highest ranking any Filipino has ever held on either tour. That is the woman Marriott signed 6 days later. Those are the coordinates. Now here is where the story gets strange. Paradox 1. If Marriott wanted a U.S. Open bounce, if the goal of this signing was to attach the brand to whatever Eala was about to do at Flushing Meadows, the calendar makes no sense. You do not announce your new ambassador 10 days before her slam. You announce her at her slam or after her slam when the highlight package is already cut and the brand can piggyback on the momentum. Every advertising executive who has ever built a media plan around a live sports event knows this. Marriott's own competitors know this, and Marriott did the opposite. They signed her when her most recent result was a 4th-round loss to Belinda Bencic at the Canadian Open, a loss, incidentally, that came in front of a sold-out Toronto night session where 3,100 tickets had cleared in under 30 minutes the moment her name was announced on that court. Hold that detail. It matters more later, but sit with the paradox first. Marriott moved before the U.S. Open, not after. That is a choice. What is Marriott seeing? Paradox 2. The campaign she's the face of is called Tennis the World, and the anchor of Tennis the World is not the U.S. Open. It's not Wimbledon. It's not Roland Garros. It is the Australian Open, where Marriott Bonvoy is entering its 6th consecutive year as official hotel partner, and where the 2027 edition is scheduled for January 11th through 31st. The press release makes this absolutely explicit. Marriott Bonvoy members get early access to Australian Open 2027 tickets. That's the deliverable. That's what her signing unlocks. So the world number 20 in women's tennis at the peak of her U.S. Open buildup has been signed to promote a tournament happening on the other side of the planet 5 months into the future. Why? Second sub-question. Hold that too. Paradox 3. Marriott didn't sign her for Asia Pacific. They signed her for Asia Pacific, excluding China. Read the release. It's in the headline. It's in the title of the campaign. It's the region she covers. Now think about that carve-out for 1 second. China is, by any reasonable measure, the single largest tennis market in Asia. Biggest tournament calendar, biggest sponsorship spend, biggest television audience. An entire WTA swing built around Chinese venues. If you sign a tennis ambassador for Asia Pacific, the default is to include China. Marriott chose not to. They drew a line around a region, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Oceania, Japan, Korea, and said, this is her region. Why exclude the biggest market? Third sub-question, hold it. Paradox 4, and this one is the quietest, but maybe the loudest. The Marriott announcement contains no dollar figure and no personal perk for Alex Eala. You have probably seen numbers circulating. So $2 million a year, unlimited first-class flights, Emirates cabins. Some are even quoting $287 million. I want to be extremely clear with you. None of those numbers appear in Marriott's press release. None appear in the Sports Business Journal write-up of the deal. None appear in the Marriott corporate site's Tennis the World page. Those figures are circulating on Facebook groups, on aggregator YouTube channels, and in copy-paste posts that mutate a little more each time they get shared. If you go to what Marriott themselves actually said, the specific benefit disclosed in the release is not a benefit to her. It's a benefit to their members. Australian Open pre-sale access, Marriott Bonvoy moments, exclusive experiences. The deal is not structured around Alex Eala the athlete. It is structured around Marriott Bonvoy, the loyalty program. Fourth sub-question. Why does Marriott want their members near her rather than the other way around? Hold it. We come back to all four in about 90 seconds, because here is where the assumption most people have been carrying breaks. You have been assuming this whole time that Marriott signed Alex Eala because Alex Eala is a rising tennis player. That is the default. It's how sponsorship coverage always reads. Player becomes famous, brand shows up, brand pays player to be famous with their logo on her chest. Endorsement. The deal exists to attach the brand to the athlete. That is the story you've been told 100 times about 100 players, and that is the story that is wrong about this deal. Here is what actually happened. Marriott did not sign Alex Eala because she is a tennis player. Marriott signed Alex Eala because she is the only credible sports marketing entry point into a region Marriott has decided is the future of their loyalty program. The tennis is the delivery mechanism. She is the delivery mechanism. The product being sold, the actual product, is Marriott Bonvoy membership in Southeast Asia, targeted at a customer base that Marriott's own research has told them is loyalty hungry, travel hungry, and currently under-owned by their competitors. That is why they moved before the U.S. Open. That is why they signed her for a campaign anchored to Melbourne, not New York. That is why they carved out China. And that is why the perk in the announcement is for members, not for her. She is not the audience of this deal. The Marriott Bonvoy member is the audience of this deal, and Alex Eala is the face they chose to speak to that audience with. Once you see it that way, the four paradoxes stop being paradoxes and start being a strategy. Take a breath, because I want you to feel the shift for a second before we prove it. Most sponsorship coverage flattens athletes into billboards. Deal is announced, number gets quoted, coverage moves on. What Marriott did with Eala is the opposite of that. They did not put her on a billboard. They wrote her into their business model. And when a company does that, when they use an athlete not to advertise a product but to build a market, the money question stops being how much they paid her and starts being how much they think that market is worth. Now, 3 proofs. Proof number 1 is the timing itself and the way it breaks with what the industry calls the Raducanu template. In September of 2021, Emma Raducanu won the U.S. Open as a qualifier, a genuinely unprecedented run, and in the weeks that followed, she signed with, by public count, roughly a dozen major sponsors: Tiffany, Dior, Vodafone, Evian, British Airways, Porsche, HSBC, and on. The signings happened after the slam in a rush at post-slam pricing. Marketing writers have picked over that period for 4 years now, and the consensus critique is not that she signed too many deals. It's that she signed them at the top of the market at prices inflated by a single tournament result in a way that made it very hard to sustain the association when her ranking fluctuated. Tennis 365, covering the Eala Marriott announcement, explicitly drew this comparison. The phrase they used was, "echoes of Emma Raducanu's rush." Marriott moved before Eala's U.S. Open. That is not a coincidence. That is a company that has read the Raducanu case study and chosen the opposite side of the trade. Sign her at number 20, not number 2. Sign her before the slam run pricing kicks in. Sign her as a market bet, not a momentum bet. You cannot fake that decision. That decision is on the calendar. Proof number 2 is the language Marriott used. The release quotes John Toomey, Marriott's chief commercial officer for the Asia-Pacific region, excluding China. If you read a lot of sponsorship announcements, I have and I don't recommend it, you learn to listen for what the executive actually says the athlete represents, because that is the part that isn't marketing copy. That is the part that reveals the strategy. Read what Toomey said. He said Alex embodies what Marriott Bonvoy stands for. He said she is authentic. He said she is inspiring, standard. Then this, proudly connected to the region we serve. That's the phrase, not future Grand Slam champion, not the next great player, not any language about tennis achievement at all in the operative sentence. The operative sentence is about the region, about her connection to the region, about the region Marriott serves. This is not sloppy PR writing. Executives at that level do not use those words by accident. Toomey is telling anyone who's listening exactly why she was signed. The tennis is the entry point. The region is the point. And the region, this is worth stating precisely, is the Asia-Pacific market that Marriott has publicly identified as the growth engine of their loyalty program for the next decade. A brief pause between proofs, because proof 3 is where this gets almost startling in how clean it is. If you had asked me to guess whether the market data was going to line up cleanly with the language and the timing, I would have said probably yes, probably fuzzy. It is not fuzzy. It is exact. Proof number 3, the climax of the case. Earlier in 2026, Marriott Bonvoy released their loyalty trends report for the Asia-Pacific region, excluding China, the exact same region Alex Eala was signed to represent, using the exact same regional carve-out language. The report is public. It's on PR Newswire's APAC feed. Here is what it says. 89% of travelers across Asia-Pacific, excluding China, participate in at least one loyalty program. In Vietnam, that number is 96%. 96. Southeast Asia is not a region where loyalty programs are being introduced. It is a region where loyalty programs are already saturated, and where whoever wins the emotional attachment of the traveler wins the next 15 years of business. Marriott has stated in language they themselves published that this region is the ground on which the future of Marriott Bonvoy will be fought. And they signed the 20-year-old Filipino tennis player at world number 20 10 days before her U.S. Open to be their face in that fight. Now put the pieces together. Sign before the slam so the pricing hasn't reset. Sign for a region carved out to match the exact region defined in your own market research. Sign a face who is proudly connected to Southeast Asia specifically, a Filipino from a country in the middle of that map, from a diaspora that spans the exact geographies where Marriott's loyalty data shows the biggest opportunity. Anchor the campaign to the Australian Open because it is the closest slam to Southeast Asia by flight time, by time zone, by everything. And structure the deal so that the deliverable, Australian Open 2027 presale, is a member benefit, meaning every time an Asia-Pacific traveler wants to see Alex Eala play the slam nearest to them, they sign up for Marriott Bonvoy. That is not a sponsorship. That is a customer acquisition funnel with a tennis player at the top of it. And it explains in one sentence every single one of the 4 paradoxes we started with. Let me sit with that for a moment. Because it's easy in a video like this to make the strategy sound cynical, the athlete as instrument, the deal as funnel, and I don't think it is, actually. I think it's a compliment. Companies do not build customer acquisition funnels around athletes whose value they think will fade. They put the funnel around the person they believe is going to keep being the answer to the question 5 years from now. Marriott looked at Alex Eala at number 20, 10 days before her U.S. Open, and decided she was that person. That is a serious bet. Now, the honest limits, because you deserve them. This reframe does not prove Marriott foresaw what would happen at the U.S. Open. What actually happened was a good but not headline-making run. She beat the 14th seed Clara Towson in the first round in a 3-set thriller, saving break points and coming back from 5-1 down in the deciding tiebreak, and then lost in the second round to Christina Buxa. A win and a loss. Solid, not seismic. If Marriott had waited 2 weeks to sign her, they'd have signed her at essentially the same market value. The genius of the timing wasn't clairvoyance about a specific tournament. It was refusing to depend on a specific tournament. That's a subtle distinction, and I want to name it clearly. This reframe also does not prove she'll hold number 20. Rankings move. Tennis is brutal on 20-year-olds carrying the expectations of an entire country and a growing regional fan base. The Bencic loss at the Canadian Open, the loss right before the Marriott deal was announced, was a real loss. In a match where she was outmaneuvered by a more experienced opponent, and there will be more of those losses this fall, she has said so herself in her post-DC media availability when she talked about growth being the only way forward and about wanting to earn every next result. And finally, the specific dollar value of the Marriott contract is not public. I said earlier that numbers are circulating. They are. None of them are confirmed. Sports Business Journal, which reports deal values when they exist, did not publish one. Marriott did not publish one. Anyone quoting you a specific figure right now, I'm 2,287,000,000 unlimited flights, any of it, is not reporting. They're guessing, or worse, they're making it up. The truth is, we don't know what she was paid. And the strangest thing about that is, it doesn't change the story. The story is the timing, the region, the carve-out, and the customer acquisition funnel. The number, when it eventually leaks, will be a footnote. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a clearer picture of the room Alex Eala is now standing in. Not a Grand Slam trophy room, not a locker room, a conference room, actually, and the kind of room where a chief commercial officer of a hotel group with roughly 9,000 properties across the world looks at market data for a region of 600 million people, looks at a Filipino tennis player at world number 20, and decides those two things belong on the same slide. She is in that room now. Marriott put her there. And when a company that operates at that scale identifies a single athlete as their entry point into their most important growth region, other companies in adjacent categories notice. Airlines notice, fashion houses notice, financial services notice, consumer electronics notice. This is not a hypothetical. This is exactly what happened to Naomi Osaka in the 18 months after her first slam, and to Coco Gauff, and to a handful of others whose ceilings turned out to be commercial as much as athletic. Marriott moving early on Eala is a signal to that entire market that she's been priced. The next deal she signs will be shaped by the fact that this deal exists. The one after that will be shaped by both. That's how these things